I was disturbed by it because I felt that the constant implication that Tyree Nichols died because he was black is false. However, I don't think that the people there know that. I don't think that it's a dog and pony show. I don't think that they're doing it because they want to put on a show and get attention. I mean, it's at a point. I know Dyson. He and I are about to actually do a debate, and that'll probably, now that I think of it, be all about this in Syracuse in a few months. I have, spoken at a certain length with Sharpton. I have been in a room with both of those men. We may not agree with them, but they are not insincere. I have to be. I,
And they're not opportunists either. Excuse me.
no,
They're
they're not.
not opportunists.
No, they're not. I hate to say this because they might hear me saying this, but I honestly believe that a black person can found their sense of significance upon this sort of thing such that they feel that this gives them a sense of purpose, and for them to widen the lens and allow that it's not 1960 would be it would be fearsome, it would be difficult, it would be dislocating, and that's not what people do. Here's some indication of the kind of sincerity that I mean. Bamboozled was a very interesting movie. I love Spike Lee's work. He's one of my three favorite directors. The answer to the question people are wondering is Woody Allen and the Coen brothers. Then Spike Lee is one of my favorites. I've seen every single scrap of everything he's done. And, he's human. Sometimes he misses, sometimes he hits it, sometimes it's in the middle. Bamboozled was the first one where I felt, wow, that didn't work. And one of the reasons was that Spike felt comfortable preaching openly in a way that he doesn't usually, because he thought of these particular issues that there are certain black people who exploit deliberately. He thought of that as just a given. He really thinks there are such people. So poor Jada Pinkett Smith having to do that speech where she shows clips of minstrelsism and has to say to him, look at what you're contributing to,
Yeah.
as if that's how people really talk. But I think Spike Lee kind of felt like it didn't have to be the way people really talk because of that liturgy to get, monotonous. Or notice the main flaw in that film, that Damon Wayans walks around talking in that silly voice. Yeah, how the main character talks like
Yeah.
this, and Jada Pinkett actually is sleeping with him, etc. That voice that Damon Wayans was allowed to do, that is Spike Lee basically saying that, frankly, people like you and me are jackasses. That this person is not only doing something wrong, but you're going to show it by having him walk around talking like a sketch character for the entirety of what's supposed to be a relatively serious film. Huge mistake unless you realize that Spike Lee really thinks that people like him are that ridiculous, that sly, that deliberate. Honestly, that's the same thing at that funeral. There's a sincerity there. I think their lens is too narrow. I think that they've gotten caught up in a sense of their identity as being based on making that same point. But I wasn't as disgusted as you are because I don't want to step out of myself either. It's hard. It's their selves. Kamala Harris, I don't know what's in her soul. I genuinely don't. But in terms of Sharpton, certainly Crump, from what I can see. And in terms of Dyson, I don't see insincerity in them. I see a preservation of their sense of their own personhood, which I cannot I cannot be
I see
angry
an irony. I
about.
don't know how you can effectively denounce quote unquote white supremacy when you're wallowing in racialism, when you've made race everything, when you're constantly playing the race card. Kamala Harris, our nation's first Black vice president. I mean, I think that formulation, which is taken for granted, is absurd, frankly. I mean, I think Benjamin Crump is Black America's Attorney General is offensive to me. That idea, that formulation is offensive to me. Um, I think when Sharpton speaks and uses the first person plural about the conditions of Black people in America, that I'm listening to a grifter who has a shtick, who is imposing it on us. And I can't be the only person who thinks like this. I'm probably one of the few people who will say it, in part because I have the protection of being a Black person. But I assure you that many, many, many Democratic voting, middle of the road white people looked at that show and had feelings not dissimilar from my own. I mean, the uh, assimilation of the problem of policing in an American city in 2023 to the fight against Jim Crow is just a fraudulent move, John. You think people don't know that they're defrauding us when they make that move? You don't think they know the difference? I'm sure they know the difference. I'm sure Michael Eric Dyson knows the difference. I'm sure the Reverend Al Sharpton knows the difference. So, no, we don't
But
agree about this. Malicious.
Glenn,
This is not just mistaken. This is malicious.
but Glenn, they all think, pretend to think. Well, remember, they're not interested in the other data. It doesn't fit with the narrative. They all think that what's going on all over the country is cases like Tyree Nichols, like Philando Castile. He's reaching into his pocket and gets shot dead.
Yeah.
They think that's going on all over the country. They think it only happens to black people and maybe the occasional Latino. They think, remember that the statistic is that black people are killed by cops disproportionately. They're killed by cops at twice the rate of white people. Well, what they're all thinking is that that means that 800 black men are killed and only 400 white men. They don't know that we're talking about proportions, so that black people are only
Okay.
14%, that it's many fewer. Can't you see that I almost want to say pretend, but then again, I don't know if the people we're talking about know the numbers here. And so they think that if that were going on, wouldn't it be kind of an extension of Jim Crow? It's just that it isn't what's going on.
John, over 10,000 black people were murdered last year. 10,000.
I know where you're going.
You think
Yeah.
they don't know that?
They think it's different if the state does it, which I think is appalling.
Yeah, okay.
But they think it's different.
Okay.
That, I agree with you, is bullshit. As far as they're concerned, if you get shot by somebody down the street, that's regrettable, as they often put it. But if you get shot by the cop, especially because the cop is probably white, well, that is Armageddon. So
They are national leaders with the capacity to orient the conversation amongst black people about what confronts us as difficulties in American society today. And they have elected, given that capacity, to so orient in the manner that I have been dismissive of, instead of calling us to strengthen our communities in ways that might actually change the facts on the ground, not about policing, but about the way in which too many of us conduct ourselves that makes life practically unlivable for the rest of us in these communities. The police are not the ones who caused 10,000 black people to be murdered last year. So, okay, I've said my piece.
I hear you. I get it. I did not like listening to it either. It was a show, but I think that those people think of it as a show with a purpose. Um, I hear you though. I disagree with their take on the whole matter.
But you're still a fan of Al Sharpton.
I don't think that he's doing anything wrong these days. I don't know if I'm a fan, but I think
Yeah,
that you have to
okay.
allow that people change. And I think he really does think of himself as doing God's work. And God's work is about racism. That's what he does. And I think that's what he sees.
Well, like I said, it was a good show. They put on a show and they know how to do it.